There's so much work to be done in separating who I am as a woman and connecting my worth as a woman to being a mom, because that is really what I struggled with. I've always tried to find something to attach my worth to, whether it was going to grad school, being a straight A student in high school, being a hustler. I've just always attached my worth to some sort of identity. And this is the first time in my life that no matter how hard I try to work towards something, I can't get it.
Welcome to the Multiple Truths podcast. We're your hosts, Holly
and Brittany. This is a space where we can come together healing in community, where we share our self-love journeys, insights, and wisdom.
A space with no hierarchy or judgment, fostering love, compassion, and respect, and where we honor our differences. With open minds and hearts, everyone's truth is welcome here. We are in this together. Let's dive into the episode. Hello, and welcome back to another episode. You're here with Holly, and today I'm joined with Shaina Frank. This is actually her second time on the podcast. I just love talking to her so much. She's such a beautiful soul. Today, we're actually going to be diving into her personal journey with infertility, which I'm so incredibly proud of her for having the courage to share and be vulnerable in this. I know this is a really sensitive topic and often challenging topic to talk about, but it is affecting more women and families than I feel we realize. To give you a couple stats, so approximately 1 in 8 couples in the US experience infertility, and around 6.1 million women have difficulty getting or staying pregnant. So I'm really hoping that through Shaina's courage and sharing her story, that we can bring more awareness to this journey and can create a safe space for open dialogue, because I feel this is often a stigmatized topic, not talked about, hush hush. So many women have so much shame and guilt around it, and grief and pain, and keeping it to themselves. So if this is you, if this is something that you've struggled with, I just want you to know that you're not alone. And I hope that you can find solace in Shaina sharing her story and being vulnerable and being open. This is not something that I've personally struggled with. I know my husband and I are going to be expanding our family in the next few years. And I'm hoping that goes smoothly, but I'm very open and aware complications may come. And this is a real reality for a lot of people. So I know that, again, this is not something that I've struggled with, but I feel like I want to really create open dialogue because I feel like it's rarely talked about. And there's just so much shame and pain that women can be experiencing alone in this. So, yeah, if you're struggling with infertility, I just want you to know that you are not alone. And I hope you can really enjoy this real and raw conversation. But to give you a little bit more background on Shaina before we hop in. So, Shaina is a licensed therapist based in North Carolina who specializes in helping modern women navigate anxiety, often showing up as people pleasing, high achieving, and perfectionist tendencies. She brings a human, relatable, and authentic approach to her work, drawing from her own personal experiences and healing journey. By creating a compassionate and supportive space, Shaina helps her clients embrace acceptance, live more authentically, and rediscover the joy that often gets lost in the pressure to be perfect. So, yeah, she just brings such a beautiful approach to the way she's dealing with her infertility, very authentic, very real. And yeah, I'm just, again, so proud of her for being open and sharing. And I hope that this conversation really supports you if you or someone you know is struggling with getting pregnant or expanding their family in any sort of capacity. So, yeah, with that, let's dive in. Hello, Shaina, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you back with us. How
Me
are
too.
you?
I'm
Yeah.
good. It feels like just yesterday we were chatting.
I know, it actually really does. Now that we're back, I'm like, I feel like I was just talking to you.
Yes, me too. I don't know where the time has gone.
I know. Yeah, well, I know that this is a really sensitive topic and I want to be very mindful of that. So I think a good place to start is if you want to share what you feel comfortable with sharing about your personal experience with infertility and just what your journey has been like, what it's looked like for you. I feel like, yeah, that would be a good place to start. So whatever you feel comfortable sharing with.
Yeah. Oh my,
Yeah.
thank you for saying that, and thank you for having me. I think we've talked about this topic a couple times just in passing,
Mhm.
and it is such a hard topic. I find myself as such a vulnerable and authentic person, but for some reason, this space is still so difficult to take up space in. And I can't quite figure out why. I think we'll talk about that.
Mm.
But for me, my infertility journey has probably been similar to a lot of women these days. You and I were just talking about how I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary with my husband. And I remember thinking back then when we got married, like, no problem. I went off my birth control probably like 6 months before we got married. So I was like,
Mm.
okay, like, let's just see how it goes. If I get pregnant now, like, we'll figure it out. And
Mhm.
slowly but surely over the last 5 years, it's been like, okay, wait, it's not happening. And of
Mm.
course, we had that realization way sooner than now. But I think a lot of women have started their journey to start a family in that way, where it's like, okay, like, I've been trying my whole life not to get pregnant. So
Mhm.
here we go. Like, right? Like, I think in high school, it's everybody's afraid of getting pregnant. In college, you don't want
Yeah.
to get pregnant, so you try so hard not to. And so
Mhm.
then stepping into the season of life where it's like, I really want to get pregnant and I can't, is
Yeah.
such a different mindset to be in. So
Mhm.
when Ernie and I got married, I was off birth control, and then we just kept doing what we were doing. And I think we heard from so many people, like, yeah, like, track your cycle, but if you're having a healthy amount of sex, like, okay, you'll get pregnant. And I was healthy.
Mhm.
I'd never had any health issues. I had an okay period, a pretty normal period. I was ovulating. Everything seemed normal.
Mhm.
And a year had passed, and it was COVID around this time. And I remember thinking, like, okay, we're not pregnant yet. No big deal. Like, whatever, right? Like, I'm still in my late 20s. We have time.
Mhm.
Then I think it was in 2021, so 2 years after we were married, we were trying really hard. Like, it was COVID. I think everybody was trying to have a COVID baby. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember that. It was like, "Oh, a COVID baby. We have nothing else
Yes.
to do, so everybody just make babies."
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and that was definitely Ernie and I, right? We were like, "Okay, this is a great time. Life
Mhm.
is slow." And that's when I really started tracking, and we used all the things, ovulation strips, the apps, taking the temperature, like, checking all these things,
Mhm.
and we started to realize it was a lot harder than we thought. And so that was 3 years ago or 4 years ago now, 2021. Um, we found out I wasn't ovulating, which I don't know how many women are unaware of that. I think
Yeah.
it's really hard to tell because everything could seem fine, and you can even have, like, your body would be producing eggs as it seems,
Mhm.
but if your body is under a state of stress or nervous system dysregulation, it's not able to create the actual healthy eggs that you need to conceive. So
Mm.
essentially since then, that's been Ernie and I's journey, is trying to get me healthy enough that I can conceive and create a family. And I don't know, I think everybody's journey with this is so different, but that's really where we're at now. We're just trying, and we can talk about all the interventions, but that's long story short where we're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think that that's such an important point that you just made is like if your nervous system, because I think most of us are walking around with dysregulated nervous systems, like I feel like anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of that is at record levels. And even like our bodies, that's gets stuck in our bodies. That's our bodies, our nervous systems, like something's off, a dysregulated nervous system. So I think even being able to like correlate that with the unable to ovulate, like, is that, I haven't really seen many people be talking about that. Do you feel like that's like a common thing that's known?
I think it's getting more known. Like, I think more and more people are catching on to this because, like you said, of the record amount of people who are walking around with, like, dysregulated nervous systems and not connected to that.
Yeah.
Uh, for me, I have always been the same weight. And when I'm under a lot of stress or something's going on, I know a lot of people tend to overeat or undereat. And I think
Mhm.
for me, I also have ADHD. I tend to undereat. Like, I just get so focused on getting things done.
Mhm.
And so I think as I started to lose weight, my body was under not just emotional pressure and stress, but also physical pressure and stress. It just
Mhm.
became the perfect storm. And
Right.
I've really looked at that as though my body just hasn't been in the place for me to create that child, right? Like, and it's not a
Mhm.
bad thing. Like, I don't have to shame it for that, but I think it just
Mhm.
gives me a lot of information. And I
Yeah.
think people are picking up on that, right? Like,
Mhm.
I was still having a regular period, but the ovulation and the eggs my body was producing wasn't quality enough to create
Mhm.
life. Does
Right.
that make
Yeah.
sense? So, like, everything
Absolutely.
was fine, and I looked fine, and I was young and healthy, and my doctor never brought up anything until I started to push, like, for questions, and she's like, "Oh, just keep trying." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Okay, it's been years of
Yeah.
trying, like, what else is going on?"
Yeah, I can imagine that's so frustrating. I just wanna acknowledge that, like, how frustrating
Mhm.
that would be from, like, constantly,
Totally.
like and just so disheartening, time after time after time. Like, I know so many women in my life as well that have struggled with this and just it can have such a toll. So I just really wanna acknowledge that. I haven't experienced that myself. So I just really wanna acknowledge that because I know it can be this all-consuming kind of thing as well, and I think that's such an important point that you made too is like so much of our life was about avoiding getting pregnant. And then it's like you don't even think that the possibility of not getting pregnant would even be a thing, you know? Yeah, so I just feel for you and yeah, for all the women that are struggling with that right now because I know that that's so hard. And I just think too I've been learning so much about how emotions get stuck in our bodies and like trauma gets stuck in our bodies and how like if that can dysregulate your nervous system but as you heal from past trauma as you feel these stuck emotions it's like energetic weight being lifted from your body kind of helping regulate your nervous system was your doc has your doctor talked about that at all? I just like I'm just learning so much about that and I don't even know if it's correlated, but that's just what's
I
coming to mind right now.
I
Yeah.
wish that is what my doctor talked about. Honestly, I've known my doctor like my whole life. And I mean, since I was like young, like she's been our family doctor forever. But no, like it was like I towards the end. So I was in a job that I think when we had our last episode, I had just transitioned out of my previous job. And it was a really high stress job. I loved it. I felt so much ownership in what I was doing. And it was so much to me, and I felt like I was growing with this company, and I felt, I was really close with my boss, and it became, in a very unhealthy way, my life.
Mm,
Uh,
mhm,
and there were times where my doctor would be like, "Okay, I noticed that you're losing weight. I noticed like these things," but there was never a time where she was like, "Hey, your nervous system is dysregulated," right? And of course, I'm a therapist. And so all this time, I've been like piecing together those things along with my own therapist helping me with it.
mhm,
But I think I'm still, even now, trying to release that trauma that
mhm,
I've been carrying for years of being in such a fight or flight mode for so long. So yeah, like
mhm.
your body stores so much. And
Yeah.
even on the outside, if everything looks okay, like I was never underweight. I was never considered underweight, overweight, or any of these things.
Mhm.
Um, that didn't mean there wasn't so many other things going on in my body emotionally
Yeah.
that you couldn't see from the surface. And I just don't think enough doctors target that.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like too, it's like knowing that you are your biggest advocate. Like,
Yeah.
even I think that's something to really empower women listening. It's like if you feel like something's up too and your doctor's not mentioning it, it's like, how can you explore those different avenues? Like, I love that you're doing that with your therapist and like, coming up with these things that your doctor didn't even bring to you, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I hate that. Like I always say, like when I have a client and we're working together to like empower them to talk to their doctor about family planning or medications or lifestyle changes, whatever it is,
Yeah.
I always tell them like, I'm so proud of you for doing that. And I also wish that you didn't have to.
Yeah.
Right. I wish
Mhm.
that we didn't have to fight so hard to bridge the gap between physical health and emotional health. And I
Mhm.
know we're getting better at it, but it's crazy to me that that wasn't the first thing we discussed at
Mhm.
my doctor, right? Like it was all the other things and we missed this. And so I think that's where a lot of my shame and regret comes from is I knew what was happening, right? Like deep down, I knew what was going on, but I think I just felt so undermined and invalidated that I was like, it's fine. My doctor
Mhm.
said it's fine. I just need to keep doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
That's one of the hardest parts about this, I think, is like forgiving myself for what I didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you feel like you've been able to offer yourself forgiveness? Because I feel like I
Um,
can't, obviously, I cannot speak from this from experience, but what I feel is like everything is a learning lesson, a learning opportunity. It's like, what was that trying to teach you in that moment? How can you use your voice now? How can you trust yourself now? It's like, do you feel like you've been able to like offer yourself that forgiveness, or is that still a journey that you're on?
I think it'll always be a journey. I don't
Yeah.
think there's an end in that in any
Yeah.
healing journey. I think it comes and goes. I was listening to a podcast yesterday with Kristen Neff, who is like the top researcher of self compassion. And she was saying that offering ourselves self compassion sounds like what you just said, which is like, I see you, I hear your pain, it's valid, I don't have to push it away. And like, how do I want to approach this next time? And
Mhm.
sometimes that's easy. Some days I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I can approach this. Like, let me drink my fertility smoothie. Let me walk for 30 minutes. Let me practice my affirmations and meditate and do all these things. And there's some days where I'm like, fuck this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, fuck this. Like, I'm so tired of this. Like, I hate at the same time that this is my experience. And I think we have to give room for both of those things, like the multiple truths.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
those, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I feel like you just said that so incredibly well. Yeah, and I think as you're diving into that too, I want to talk more about like how this experience has maybe like impacted your emotional or physical or mental well-being, because like you said, some days you wake up and you're great and you're meditating and you're doing all the things, but other days it's like fuck this. I want like, so I'm just curious like how this has impacted you, because even just to share my own example, because I spoke with my sister and she's comfortable with me sharing this as well, but she has two girls, she has two babies that are healthy, and she's really, her and her husband are really wanting a third child, like they just feel like that is what is going to complete their family. And she's been trying for a while and they've had two miscarriages that have been really like emotionally taxing. And I know for her, it's just become all consuming. At one point, it was all consuming, all she could think about, getting these fertility teas and getting acupuncture and going all into, oh, look at all of, there's
Eat
so
the
many
french
fertility.
fries, eat
Yeah.
eat the
Yeah.
pineapple. Yes, all these different things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like now she's kind of at a place where she has her days just like you, but she's really getting to this place of like really trying to lean on her faith and trusting the timing, and what is this trying to teach her and how can she show up for herself more and be grateful for what she has. And she really shifted her perspective, which I'm so proud of her, but she has her days and her moments, of course. So I'm curious just like how that's been for you.
Yeah, I mean, probably very similar. I think that it's so messy. Any healing journey that somebody's on is so messy. You start one way and you imagine how your healing journey is going to be. And then once you're in it, you're like, this is nothing what I thought. So I think this part of my life has impacted me in ways that I don't even know yet. But I do know that it has created so much space for me to really look at myself and look at what it is I feel is missing without becoming a mom. And I think there's so much just for me, and I think a lot of women too, there's so much work to be done in separating who I am as a woman and connecting my worth as a woman to being a mom. Cause that is really what I struggled with, right? Like I think I've always tried to find something to attach my worth to, whether it was being like going to grad school, being a straight A student in high school, being a hustler, whatever, right? Like, I think I've just always attached my worth to some sort of identity. And this is the first time in my life that no matter how hard I try to work towards something, I can't get it. And that's really hard for perfectionists. That's really
Mm,
hard for people who have spent their life trying to control it and manage it, because this is not one of those areas that we can force, right? No matter how hard I work, it might not happen. No matter how much I do, it might not happen.
Mhm.
So I think that piece alone has affected my life in so many ways, good and bad. I always talk about relationships evolving in terms of where you're at in your life. And I think it's totally shifted my relationships. I think any woman in their 30s goes through this phase of like, where do I fit in
Mhm.
now? Like, I thought in my 30s, like, oh, by this time, I'm going to be a mom. Like, no problem. These are going to be my friends. This is what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
And now I kind of feel like a lost puppy. And that's really hard for a sense of self, right?
Mhm.
That's really hard for somebody's mental health to kind of be like, where do I fit in? What is
Mhm.
my story now? I'm not a hustler, right? Like I feel like I would call myself like a retired boss babe. I don't want that life anymore, but I'm
Mm.
also not a mom, right? Like, so I'm like, okay, well, where do I fit in? You know what I mean? Like, do you feel that pressure to be like, okay, as a woman, where do I fit into this world?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know exactly what you mean. I think that's so valid. Of course
I'm
we
sorry, I
want.
don't know if I answered your question, by the way.
No, you did. Yeah, definitely. Yes. I loved that answer. And I feel like how you feel is so valid, because like as humans, we want to fit in, and
Yeah,
especially if you have friends that are having
yeah,
children and you're seeing that life, but that's not where you're going. And then all they're talking about is their children. It's like, oh, okay, maybe I don't fit in here and I don't really resonate with them anymore because I'm struggling and they have these kids. And then even, yeah, I feel definitely being a woman in her 30s like I am as well, like I don't necessarily feel the pressure to have children because I feel like that's just where Eric and I are at right now. Like I feel like we're very focused on ourselves and that's what we need to be doing. I feel that so strongly and like our relationship and we're in like such a solid place and I know we're going to be expanding our family in hopefully in the next coming years, but who knows if there'll be trials and tribulations with that. I'm so aware that there are challenges that come now, but I think for me, something that I've really focused on myself and like
mhm.
the right people have found me and I've really resonated with the right people. So it's like I stopped trying to fit in and I started seeing myself and my own worth and like I kind of like attracted in like what I felt was more in alignment with me in this phase in my life, if that makes sense.
Oh my
But
gosh, yeah.
I totally resonate with needing to like try and yeah, where do we fit in? If you especially if you were I thought that I was gonna have kids by this age. Absolutely. I thought I was gonna have a house, kids,
Yes,
settle down.
whole
That
life.
could be further from like what we're doing right now. But it's exactly what I need and what Eric needs right now. And I really trust that. So I feel like I really leaned on that, but I know that's how you feel is totally valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And like I'm a therapist and so like I know logically all of these things, right? Like I
Yeah.
know logically I
Yeah.
have a beautiful life and I trust that I'm where I'm supposed to be and I can feel all of those things. And then there are those times, like we were saying earlier, that pop up, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm really triggered by something right now. Like, what is coming up for me? And I have most of my best friends, we have a group, I love them so much, are pregnant or have children already. And so Brene Brown says, like, in order to belong, you'll never, or she says something like, fitting in will never give you belonging. And so I try to balance like, okay, I don't need to fit in with my friends, but like, how do I still belong? Like, how do
Right.
I still feel like I belong to these conversations and these groups? And I think the point where I'm at right now is giving space for how different things look, right? Like, how different my life is and accepting the grief that comes with that, right? Like, I'm not raising little ones with my best friend from freshman year, right? Like we're not doing that. And there's so much grief that
Yeah.
comes with this process, right? Like what you had imagined versus what you're living.
Mhm.
Uh, so while I know logically I don't have to fit in, I think there's always a part of us as humans that will crave that.
Mhm.
Even logically
Absolutely.
know I belong and I'm worthy no matter where I fit in, no matter who likes me, no matter who approves.
Mhm.
We're such a social species that underneath all of it is still, I think, this deep desire to belong. Like my oldest sister has a little one. My next older sister is pregnant. She had her own journey with it. And so even with my family, I'm like, okay, wait, I don't fit in there right now with my sisters either. So it's just really hard in that way
Yeah.
to know that I don't need to fit in, but I also still want to belong.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's such an important point about grief, like allowing yourself to grieve what you thought was what is not what it's looking like now, and really like giving yourself that grace and that permission to grieve,
Yes. Oh
you
my gosh,
know.
yes. That permission is so big. Like really being able to embody, I'm allowed to feel what I'm going to feel. I don't have to push it away. It can come up. How do I want to treat that emotion when it comes up? Right. Like it's just giving me information, right?
Mhm.
Like any emotion. It is not the bad guy. It's not the devil on our shoulder that we need to swat away, but it's
Mhm.
information. And I think what my grief is telling me is this really hurts. And I'm
Yeah.
really sad. And I wish things were different. And I think just being able to name it is when we're able to start to tame it and start to move forward with it.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. Because I think so often it's so easy to push that away. Like, no, I don't want to feel that way. No, I'm just going to focus on gratitude of like what I
Yes,
have.
yeah, like,
It's like,
such a good life. What's wrong with me? Yeah.
yeah, but no, it's like acknowledging that pain, because pain is
Yeah,
pain and it just wants to
yeah,
be felt, and really giving
totally.
yourself that space. I think that's so important, to
Mhm.
really give yourself that space to grieve.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I really want to hone in on that. I'm like getting so many chills. I think it's so important to just really like give yourself space, whatever it looks like, just to grieve, to really like just be sit in those emotions without feeling that shame or that guilt around it.
Yes. Yeah, and, like, if that shame and guilt comes up, right, like, we don't get to decide that, but I do think we get to decide what we do with it. When I
Mhm.
talk to so many of my clients about setting boundaries, I think there's so much guilt that comes up with it at first, just naturally, right? Like, if you're
Mhm.
not used to doing this in your life or anything, like, there's gonna be some pushback from our body, right? It's
Mhm.
gonna be like, "Oh, I don't want this. This doesn't feel safe. This isn't familiar. I'm not used to this," right?
Mhm.
We can just acknowledge that sometimes even when we're doing the right thing for ourselves, there will be guilt and shame. We then get permission to decide what to do with it. But
Right.
if you keep pushing it down, like, "Oh my god, I shouldn't feel guilty. I'm supposed to be accepting it and giving it space, and if I feel guilty, it must be I'm doing something wrong." Like, no, guilt's also gonna be there for a while,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah, like, I think just giving space for all of it, whatever comes up, noticing it, naming it, and allowing our body to feel it and process through it, whatever
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. Something that's coming to mind too, that I know has been supportive, is like for my sister at least, is like leaning on her community, like leaning on her friends as well, like not just
Yeah.
being necessarily like, happy all the time and like so
Yes.
happy for it's like actually allowing yourself to be vulnerable and like show that like you are feeling upset and you actually may need support, and like being very vulnerable with the community that's around you, because we're here to lift each other up and be there for each other during hard times. And I think it's really hard to ask for support when you're really struggling. So
Yeah.
yeah, is that something that you've found supportive too?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, again, Brene Brown, she says like vulnerability is the antidote to shame. Self compassion is the antidote to shame. And so with fertility, there's so much shame that comes with it because it's the one thing that women are quote unquote supposed to do. Like, I don't agree with that at all, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of us grew up with that idea.
Yeah.
My mom had 6 kids, right? Like I'm one of 6 kids. And I'm like, oh my God, like, yeah, of course, I'll have no issue getting pregnant. This is
Yeah.
one day going to be my calling, no problem. And when things aren't that way, of course it brings up shame. Like something's wrong with me. So it's like something is wrong with me. I must be broken. I must be doing something wrong. So yeah, like naming that and being vulnerable and sharing that and finding community that are also going through the same thing, that kills the shame.
Mhm.
Right? If shame says like there's something wrong with me, I'm broken, I'm alone. Vulnerability says there's nothing wrong with me, I belong, and it's
Mhm.
okay to feel that way. There's so much power in community. Like
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be people in person. I find so much community in some of the accounts I follow on Instagram. Like, that's okay. I
Yeah,
think, like,
absolutely.
people shit on social media, and I do too. Like, I think it's so unhealthy in a lot of ways, but for people who need specific types of community, social media can be such a powerful tool in that, right? Like, reading something, reading a quote, and being like, "Oh my god, me too." Right? Like,
Yeah.
healing, and I feel that way about some of the things you guys post, like,
Oh,
how feeling that somebody else feels this way. There isn't anything wrong with me. I
Yeah,
think it's hard to find that space for community when it is such like a stigmatized topic. So
right. And
fertility.
yeah. Absolutely. And I feel like even you having the courage and bravery to share this right now, like you're going to make so many other women feel seen and
I
heard.
think
Oh my God,
so.
that's making me emotional. I feel like really though, like it's people having the courage to speak about these things publicly and like be vulnerable because it's uncomfortable. But it's like
It's
pushing yourself out that comfort zone because we know so many other people are struggling with things. So it's like there's so many women struggling with infertility. And I feel like just you being open and vulnerable there's so much power in that, you know?
thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I
Because
think
I
like
know yeah.
yeah, go
You go
ahead.
ahead. You go ahead.
Whenever you asked me to do this podcast, like there was so much shame that was coming up for me. Like almost like I am not allowed to take up space in this area of life, right? Like I am not allowed to take up room here. Right? Like I think it's so easy to compare our journeys to other people. Like I'm like, "Oh, well, I still have a few years to try to get pregnant and we haven't done all the interventions," right? And
Mhm,
I think it was almost like imposter syndrome. Like it was almost like, oh my God, am I a fraud if I go on here and speak about my story? Because like I still have time. Like, what if this is different 5 years from now? But I
mhm,
actually had a friend tell me this was maybe like a year or two ago that there's allowed to be grief and things just like not being the way you thought. Like it still might be happening, but it's okay to still be sad about it and not happening the way you thought it would. So, for example, I haven't done all the medical interventions to get pregnant. I haven't engaged in all of them for so many reasons. I think we could talk about like for an hour why, for me personally, I haven't chosen to go through every single medical intervention there is.
mhm,
And even if I do get pregnant, and when I do get pregnant, it's still okay for me to be sad that it didn't happen the way I wanted it to. Right?
mhm,
Like it's still okay for your sister to say like, "Yeah, I still have 2 beautiful babies and this is still really hard." And I think that's what was
mhm,
coming up for me, Holly, when you asked me
mhm,
to speak on the podcast. I talked to Ernie about it and I was like, "I don't know if I can take up space in that way."
mhm.
And there was a moment where I was like, I can stay small and I can hold my story to me and I can like do that, but I wouldn't be living in alignment with my values. And one of them being authentic and being vulnerable. And it's
Yeah.
so hard to talk about.
It is, but I'm so glad because it feels like yeah, you just having the strength and courage to do this, I don't think you even, like, realize the ripple effect that it can have on
Yeah.
people, and I think it just wherever you are on your journey, pain is
Yes.
pain, wherever you are, and it's, like, not comparing, like, maybe someone does have babies but they're like my sister, she's unable to get pregnant, like, her pain is still valid, you know, and, like, your
Yeah.
pain is valid, and I know, you know, other people in my life, they've struggled with pregnancy and now they have babies, but it came in a different way than they expected, just like you said. And it's like, that's okay to grieve how you once thought that they were
Yeah.
like having a natural birth or whatever it may be, you
Totally.
know?
Like conceiving naturally, like, oh,
Yeah.
there's so much shame in that.
Mhm.
And when I talk to my clients about medications for their mental health, I do it with such care because I know that it's not the end all be all, right? But when I talk to them about it too, like there's other things that need to go with it, but like I'm a firm believer that we don't have to suffer if there's another option. And that's
Mhm.
something I've really had to grapple with in terms of my fertility, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't have to suffer like I have
Mhm.
in the last few years. Like I'm allowed to take another step and get medical support,
Mhm.
right? Like I'm the only one on my sisters who have had to, right? Like I
Mhm.
feel like I'm like, well, they've gotten pregnant naturally. Like I shouldn't take the easy way out. Like I shouldn't have to like talk about medications and get on medications and go through these body changing procedures if they, right, like they were able to get pregnant. So I think like there's just so much shame in every part of the story that you talk about.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, it's all valid, and I don't think we need to suffer unnecessarily. And that's where I'm
Mhm.
at in my stage of becoming a mom is for so long I was like, okay, let me just push through and I'm gonna get pregnant. Like I will get pregnant. Let me just be healthy. Let me take all the supplements. Like But with that comes hormonal acne that I've never had, like, and I'm so grateful to say I've never had that, but, like,
Mhm.
I've never had that, and I'm like, "Oh my god,
Mhm.
but wait, should I be upset that I'm having hormonal acne now because I'm trying to get pregnant? Like, why am I upset about this?" Do you know what I mean?
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah.
Looking to connect with like minded community on your journey of self growth, self love, and spiritual discovery? Join the Beehive, a supportive community hosted by Holly and I, designed to help you on your personal transformation and healing journey, and to help you tap into your innate wisdom with live monthly Q&A sessions, exclusive content, and a like minded community. The Beehive is the perfect space to grow and step into your most authentic self. For more information and to sign up, check the link in the show notes.
And
It was
something I want to say too, when you're saying like there's so much shame around that and like being vulnerable, like shame really dies when it's told in safe spaces.
yes,
So it feels like the more that you talk about this, other women talk about this, it's like the
yeah,
shame is lifted because then it's like, oh, we're all feeling this,
yeah,
and like let's be in this together, and let's stop feeling this shame, even though it's valid to feel shame and acknowledging and allowing that to be there too. But you know what? It's like I feel like there's so much freedom and the shame really dies when we're like having honest conversations like this.
yeah.
Um, yeah. And something too that I want to just dive into quick while you're talking about, like, because I know someone in my life who I love so much who really struggled with infertility and had to go the medical route. But first, she really tried the holistic route
Yes,
and she gained so much resentment because of all of the there's so many supplements, there's so many teas, there's so many, doing, like I said before, like acupuncture, meditation, getting all natural products to make sure you're not messing up your hormones. Like
yes.
there's so much out there, so much misguided information, like buy this and you'll be good, buy this and you'll be good,
Right.
and so
Oh my
much
god, yes.
consumption. And something she really had to learn, I feel, was like really going the more traditional route, but like finding that balance between
Yes,
Western and Eastern medicine. And something now that we just had a conversation around was like really trusting yourself too, not just like doing what the doctor says, not just buying this supplement because
right.
that's going to be a way
That
to get
influencer
pregnant.
said that, yeah.
Yeah. It's like trust yourself, trust what feels true for you because only
Yes,
you know what's true.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That has been I love that you brought up the word resentment because that feels so valid. I think for what I'm going through right now, right? Like I every single month that I get my period, there is this sense of resentment. I'm like, what the fuck else am I supposed to do?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's like, oh my God, you buy all the things and you are healthy. And then like I try all the things and I change my lifestyle and I meditate and I am a therapist and I go to therapy and I do all these things. And so I think that resentment is just saying like, I think resentment at the end of the day is unexpressed needs. And I'm
Mhm,
really trying to listen to that. Like
mhm,
if you look up the definition of resentment, I think it's like unexpressed feelings and needs and emotions. And so when I notice that resentment, like I noticed this month when I got my period, I'm like, okay, what am I actually feeling underneath that resentment? I think I'm
mhm,
just feeling, again, sad. I'm feeling pissed. I'm feeling annoyed. I'm feeling frustrated that I have to change my life around all these ways and other people don't.
mhm.
Like, oh my gosh, have you ever met somebody who's just like, oh, I didn't even mean to get pregnant. Just
Yeah,
happened. And
I'm
that's
sure
not
that's so
fault.
triggering though. I wanna actually get into that and, like,
Yeah.
even social media and stuff because I can imagine that's so triggering, like, constantly seeing people, like, pregnancy announcements and
Oh,
expanding their
yeah.
family and all of that kind of stuff. Because I know for the women that I know in my life that have struggled, like, some of them have had to completely take a step back from
Yes.
social
Oh my gosh.
media, like, delete
Yes.
their accounts because it can be
Yes.
so triggering, and, like
Yes.
and then it's, like, that shame of, like, "Okay, but I wanna be happy for other people, so, like,
Totally.
why am I, like" so
Totally. Like, I'm not this person. Like, why am I mad at them? I love them so much. Why am I upset?
yeah.
Yes.
So
So
maybe, yeah, if you wanna talk about how you navigate that, because I can imagine that's really tough at every turn, like checking your phone and it's like someone else is pregnant or they're
yes.
like baby photos of their family or whatever it may be?
Oh my gosh. I've had to do so much work with this. So much work with this.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember one of my best friends, she got pregnant almost like 2 years ago, I think. She's almost 2, her little girl, and she's my best friend, and I remember there's no right way to tell a friend who's struggling with infertility that you're pregnant, right? Like, I just wanna name that. So if you're listening to this and you get nervous about telling your people and telling your friends and telling people that are struggling that you're pregnant, like, it is okay. I don't think there's a perfect way to tell somebody that. Like, I do recommend texting. Like, my best friend texted me, but I was also a therapist in the middle of my workday, and I looked at my phone and I saw that text and I was like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
right? Like a stab to the heart. And I love her so much and I love her little girl so much. And I think you have to do your work in that, right? Like, I don't think that that's something that happens overnight. I've had to do a lot of processing and learning what I need, right? So, what I needed that day was to not respond immediately, and I didn't. I remember I went home, I cried. I was like on my way home from work, and I was just like crying and
Mm.
feeling that shame of like, I love my best friend so much and I'm so happy for her. And God fucking damn it, why isn't this me? I wish this was me. I don't know how to respond. And so I just want to name that. Like, if you don't know what to say back, right? Like both ends of it. So, on one hand, if you're the friend who got pregnant and you're afraid of telling your friend who's struggling with infertility that you're pregnant, it's okay. It's not your job to manage their emotions. Like, there is a way to say it. I would text, I would never just throw it on somebody when you're face to face. But then
Mm.
for that person who is struggling to get pregnant and sees a friend post their photos or has a friend text them, like, I just want to say, give yourself space to feel it as long as you need. Step away from your phone, put it down, grieve the way you need to, and then come back to it. I've had to set so many boundaries with social media. Around the holidays, I think is really hard.
Mm, mhm.
Everybody shares these like, look what Santa put under the tree this year.
Yeah.
Like, I remember last year, like, oh my gosh, we're so grateful for this new turkey
Yeah.
coming. So, like, over the holidays, like, I have to step away from social media. It's just too vulnerable. And I think that's what I was saying earlier. Like, I don't think this journey ends for me. I think
Mhm.
no matter how much healing and work I do, it's still gonna hurt.
Mhm.
And that's okay. I don't have to make it okay. So I don't know. It takes a lot of maneuvering to figure out what works for you, and you're gonna fuck it up, and you're gonna think you're okay, and you're gonna go to that baby shower, and then you're gonna come home, and you're gonna be like, "Oh my god, why did I do that? I feel so mad. I feel so resentful." And
Mhm.
I don't like that version of me. And so in order for me to not be that version of me, I have to take very intentional steps to take care of myself. I
Mhm.
don't like the person I am when I can't celebrate my friends.
Yeah.
Makes
Abs
sense. Like, I
Yeah,
know that
absolutely.
version of me is valid, but I also believe that if I take care of myself well enough, I don't have to be that version as much. I can be loving and caring and happy for my friends if I take care of myself. And that's my
Mhm.
responsibility. It's not theirs.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's such good advice, like everything that you just gave. I love that so much. Because even in your friendships too, do you feel like you've had to set boundaries with like hanging out with friends in that sort of way? Has that been a way to take care of yourself, or more like
No.
to just taking care of yourself, centering yourself before going into social events?
Both,
No.
both.
Yeah.
Like, those things are so powerful. I love that you mentioned, like, centering yourself. Like, I really believe in setting an intention for some of these really hard events. Like, whether it's like you're going somewhere, you're going to a baby shower and you're struggling with fertility, or you're going to a wedding and you're not married yet and you really wish you had that. I think, like, slowing down before that event is self-care and saying, like, what is my intention? So, for example, if I wanted to go to a baby shower right now and I really wanted to celebrate my friend, my intention would be like, how can I be a good friend while also taking care of myself, right? Like, and keep coming back to that. Like, my intention is to be present. My intention is to love my friend. My intention is to be here now. I think it gives your brain a chance to really anchor itself in something that's in alignment with your values versus going and me just being like, oh my God, my head all over the place. So
Mhm.
that's one of them, and I've also turned down baby showers, and I think that's okay too. Like, I think I'm at the spot now where I don't. Like, I like baby showers, I can go to them. I'm planning my sister's baby shower, um, but I remember vividly last year telling Ernie, for one of our very good friends, "I don't wanna go.
Mhm.
I don't wanna go to another baby shower. I don't wanna go to another three-year-old's birthday party. I don't wanna do this."
Yeah.
And for somebody who's such a recovering people pleaser and such an extrovert and so outgoing, that's been such a hard part of me.
Mhm.
to validate and be with, right? Like, that's not who I am. I go to all the parties. I love my people so hard.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm also really grateful for taking care of myself in that way, even when
Yeah.
it was really hard.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you too, because it is hard to say no
Yeah.
too. And especially like you don't
No.
want them to take it personally, but that's showing up for yourself. Saying no is showing up for yourself, even though that's hard in that moment. And there's so much power in that and really taking care of yourself and showing up for yourself
Yep.
first and putting your needs first.
Yes.
So I think that's something really huge is like saying no when you mean no, you
Yes, and
know?
tolerating the discomfort that comes with it, right? So many
Mhm.
people are afraid of saying no, right? Like, I
Mhm.
specialize in working with people pleasers, and there is so much discomfort in saying no and taking care of yourself. But I promise you, you will get through that discomfort, and it's a lot better than abandoning yourself time and time again to keep the peace, right?
Mhm.
Like, I believe that the friends I have in my life will get over it. They'll get the fuck over it, right?
Yeah.
Like, they'll be disappointed, but they love me and they know me. And
Mhm.
as long as I communicate that, right? Like, you can't just like bail on somebody and be like, fuck you. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to go into this, right? But
Mhm.
the people that love you and support you will understand. And if they don't, they will. They'll get
Mhm.
over it, right?
Mhm.
Like, we can tolerate the discomfort that comes with taking care of ourselves. And I would rather choose that than consistently neglecting what I need in that moment. And that's a hard practice.
Yeah, I think that's where so much resentment gets built up
Yes,
too. If you keep
yes.
saying yes, and it's like, oh, I'm so resentful and angry at these people,
Totally.
but it's yeah,
Exactly. It's those
mhm,
unexpressed needs, right? Like I was saying earlier,
right,
like that sign of resentment is like, what didn't I communicate? Right? Like that is what I ask myself when I'm resentful. What didn't I say? Right?
mhm,
Like what didn't I ask for? What didn't I communicate? This is on me.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
hard, right? Like that's hard to confront, but I also think it's so powerful.
Yeah, because I think so often it's so easy to, like, blame it on the other person, but it's, like,
Right.
something within you, that, like, you're
Mhm.
upset with about yourself of, like, what didn't I like, being self-reflective in that moment, which is such a strength of or sign of growth, I feel, to be able to
Yeah.
really do that, and not just, gossip and talk negative and all of that, you know?
Yes. And like
Yeah.
thankfully, like my husband will call me out in that, right? Like I think having the people around you that will support you and say, like, in a kind, loving way, like, hey Shayna, I think something else is coming up for you. Like,
Yeah.
you need that. But I also think in order for us to address resentment, we need a really good, strong, full bank of self-compassion. And I don't think enough people have that.
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
that make sense? Like you cannot address resentment unless you know how to be kind to yourself. Otherwise, you're just gonna shame and avoid and blame it on everybody else.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with another woman I had on the podcast, and she was saying that self-compassion isn't like in our nature. Like we actually have
No.
to learn how to be self-compassionate. So of course
Yes.
we're instantly going to go to that negative, like shame, be hard on ourselves. You have to reach out for self-compassion. You have to that has to be a rewiring of your mind of showing yourself
Yes.
that, you
It's
know.
such a practice. I practice
Yeah.
every fucking day of my life, and I will
Me
always,
too.
right? Like, it's a practice.
Yeah.
Kristen Neff, like I was saying, like earlier, like the podcast I listened to yesterday, like I just love Kristen Neff. I think if anybody wants to learn anything about self-compassion, like read her stuff, listen to her podcast. But she was saying that our brains are so meant for survival. They are not meant to be nice to ourselves. That doesn't keep us alive, right? Like
Mhm.
back in the caveman days, self-compassion wasn't going to keep us alive, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
our negative bias tendency was going to keep us alive. And so you're right, Holly, like that is where our brain goes. And so
Mhm.
I think I've been practicing self-compassion probably for 10 years now, and I'm still not perfect at it.
Yeah, I
You
don't
know?
think that anyone will ever be perfect. It's like
No.
but it's a daily choice. It's a
Yes.
daily choice to be compassionate. It's like catching yourself because it's natural. It's human to like be hard on yourself and go down those negative loops, but it's like that
Yes.
conscious awareness to like choose that self-compassion in that moment. It's like a moment by moment choice. It's something that I
Yes.
I deal with every day as well.
It's so true. I was just telling a client the other day, like, if I could teach every single one of my clients one thing and they'd be so fucking good at it, they'd be a natural at it, is self compassion.
Yes, absolutely.
Truly. But that also takes mindfulness. Like you said, if you're not
Mhm.
aware of it moment by moment, you can't change it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's hard. It's a practice.
It definitely is. Yes. Yeah. And I think just one last thing before, like, I have a couple more questions, but I feel like too, just with you and Ernie navigating this, like
Mhm.
going through this time, I guess has it affected like I know with your sisters are getting pregnant. You guys are navigate you and Ernie are navigating getting pregnant. Like, has it shifted your relationships at all? And like, how do you guys like, I guess, keep strong communication during this time? Because I think it can really tear couples apart, you know? We're interrupting this episode to share something close to our hearts, our virtual healing circles. We have been loving them so much and meeting so many of you incredible people through them. Brittany and I are passionate about bringing people together to support one another and heal in community. We felt alone on our paths for so long, and coming together in community has been instrumental to our growth, and we've both seen the importance in it. We aren't meant to do this alone. In unity and vulnerability, we find strength, courage, and support each other on our paths back to ourselves. Our monthly virtual seminars blend discussions, workshops, and practices to nurture your mind, body, and spirit. Whether seeking guidance, healing, or a listening ear, our gatherings offer a safe, inclusive space for people to connect, heal, and grow. Join us on this journey of healing in community. Together we can heal, grow, and thrive. Register for the next circle using the link in the show notes. We hope to see you there.
Yeah. Okay. So if you asked me a few years ago whether or not I thought all of this was going to make Ernie and I closer, I would have said, hell no.
Mhm.
I remember being like, I am so annoyed. He doesn't have to do any of the work. It's me. I'm the problem. Like, it's my
Mhm.
body. I'm so annoyed. He just gets to have sex with me and enjoy and reap the benefits of this.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was really struggling. I think what I've had to realize, and I think that this has been the most life altering thing for me in my 30s, is learning how to find the beauty in the breaking and finding the beauty in the things that are here,
Mhm.
even if the things I thought should be here aren't. So, for example, like when I was at the beach the other day, I was reflecting on this. I was trying to find shark teeth. I always do. Like it's a
Oh.
gem in North Carolina. And there was some storms, and I was like, oh, I'll totally find a shark tooth. And when I got so caught up in that, in the result of that, I missed out on so many other shells
Mm,
that were just
mhm.
as beautiful in their own way.
Mm,
And again, if you asked me a few years ago, I think I was so focused on getting pregnant and that being the beauty, right? Like that had to happen or I was not going to be happy. And over time, by noticing this and reflecting on this and reading and doing my own work, there has been so much beauty that has come from Ernie and I going through this together. Um, I think that I was,
mm,
I think there's something so beautiful in showing up for your partner in the really hard times and letting it be messy, but then also showing them like I'm here for you even when it's messy.
mhm.
And I don't know if that has come with maturity or my own work, but I think we're the strongest we've ever been. And I don't think that's the case for so many people. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that's
I'm
so
sorry.
beautiful. No, I love that so much. Absolutely.
Like what we were saying earlier, which is like, what am I learning from this? I'm
Yeah.
learning so much about Ernie. I'm learning so much about our foundation. I'm learning so much about who we are, who I am as a woman
Mm, mhm,
outside of being a mom. And as much as I wish that this wasn't the case for me,
mhm.
I think I'm getting to the point where I'm accepting it, and I'm like, "Wow, I've learned so much about myself." I think even since I saw you, and when was it? April or May? Oh my god.
Yeah.
I was still in such a space of fight or flight, like getting out of my last job, and I think
Mhm,
trauma lived in my body for so long, and so now I'm finally getting to the softness again, and I'm
mhm.
like, "Oh my god, there's so much
Oh,
beauty in this." And that's the same with infertility. Like, for me, I don't think everybody has to be there. Right? You
mhm.
don't have to be grateful, and I'm not saying I'm necessarily grateful, but I do think I've been able to find what is good in this, and that's
Yeah.
been really healing for us.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That makes me so happy to hear too. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, that it's been so healing for you both. It feels like you both have probably had to do your own a bit of inner
Of
work, focus on yourself, him focus on you, you guys focus on your relationship, it just I'm so glad to hear that it's bringing you together because I think so often it can tear people apart. So I love that so much for you guys.
Yeah, like, and I like for the people who aren't there, like it does take a lot of work. Like I
Mhm.
understand that part. Like there were times where like I was really mad at Ernie. I was like, you don't have to do all this. You don't have to take all these supplements. You don't have to like not drink. Like there'd be weekends where I'm like, okay, well, no, I'm ovulating. It's my 2 week wait. And I can't go out and drink with you right now. Like I think we talked about this last time. Like I'm not big into drinking anymore, but like I also struggle to find my place in bars with
Mhm.
him on the weekends. Like it doesn't matter. He's healthy. His sperm is fine. And I'm like, well, fuck, I have to stay home and I don't really wanna go to the bar, so that was a really hard part of that we had to navigate, right? Like, it was not picture perfect. I'm a therapist,
Mhm.
and I still was really unkind to my husband at times because of that resentment, because this is just really hard. You're not gonna be perfect at it.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I feel like I just would like to end too, just for any women that are beginning to face fertility issues or they've been on this journey for a while. Like, I guess what advice would you give to them, both like emotionally, practically, any practices that have worked for you?
Totally. I think if I could give feedback and advice that's generalized, it would be to talk about it, just like you were saying earlier, right? Like, talk about it. Don't
Mhm.
let it sit inside of you as if something is wrong with you, right? Like, find your worth by being that authentic version of you. Nobody expects you to be perfect, and I think the more that we sit with it inside, the more that shame builds, the more the idea of, like, something is wrong with me as a woman builds. Um, I would also say that your value is not in producing a child. I think that patriarchy makes that assumption so evident to so many of us. Like I fight against that so much with my clients, with myself.
Mhm.
You are still a worthy woman and human being, even if you can't produce, even if you can't produce in the natural way, even if you can't conceive in the natural way. I would say there's so many great free meditations and visualizations that I found on Insight Timer. They're so great. Insight Timer is a free app, and I've had it for like 10 years and I love it. I always go back to it. Um, so yeah, like talking about it, visualizing like what you need, that self-compassion, going to therapy, talking to your partner about it, including your partner in it, asking questions, advocating for yourself, not being afraid of getting that weird look from your doctor, right? Like not being afraid of them trying to like minimize your concerns. Like I wish my doctor 5 years ago would have told me to go get my hormones tested then,
Mhm.
right? Like I wish so badly I had somebody telling me go fight for it. Like go get more information. I just think we live in a society where women are often invalidated, we're questioned. And I know like we're all a product of the patriarchy and I know we are all guilty of that, but you know your body, listen to it. If something feels off, talk about it, ask about it, get that support, get that second opinion. I just wish so badly somebody had said that to me then,
Mhm.
but I also wasn't talking about it enough, I think. So there's that too.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think a lot of people will resonate with that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything that we missed?
Trust yourself, like you said, like you know yourself better than anybody. Trust and look inside yourself and yeah, do what feels right. Don't be afraid of upsetting people and ruffling the feathers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that trust from within is
Yes.
so important, especially when you're looking into Western medicine, Eastern medicine, like what feels right for you, what feels true for you, and like really being an advocate for yourself. Yeah.
Okay, and actually let me add this one more thing because I think this is so important. If
Mhm.
you had a traumatic event, if you've been through trauma, it's really hard to trust your body. That is okay. It will come back. I think so often, like people are like, trust your gut, trust your body. But if you've experienced trauma, your body doesn't know how to trust you, right? Your body's on high alert.
Mhm.
And I think that part of fertility is coming back to your body and learning how to trust your body again and how your body can trust you again. And I don't think that we can always do that alone. And that's where I would really suggest a trauma informed therapist to help you reconnect to your body. There is so much self work you can do out there, and I'm not saying that can't happen. But for me, I think that's what was getting in the way, is because of the trauma I had experienced. I was like second guessing my body all the time. I was doubting it. So I would really, really, really recommend getting in with a trauma informed therapist to talk about that and reconnect to your body again. Truly, I just really believe in that right now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes. Thank you for adding that. That's so valuable. And I've even seen quotes on Instagram that are kind of a joke, but it's like, is it my intuition or is it my anxiety? It's
Yeah.
hard to kind of like tell the difference. And I think when you really start to reconnect to your body and like feel through your body, you can feel when it's your intuition versus
Exactly.
when it's anxiety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But trauma survivors they can't tell that as well. And that's
Right.
okay. Their
Yeah.
body is so dysregulated. Everything
Mhm.
feels like a threat. So like that, like trust your intuition, trust your gut isn't always helpful for those trauma survivors, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't know how to come back to their body. That's okay. It doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong.
Mhm.
Um, but it's okay. Like you don't have to do it alone. There is a
Mhm.
lot of work that can be done in therapy that can help you come back to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for adding that. I think that's so powerful. Yeah, thank you. Oh, well, thank you so much for just your bravery, for your vulnerability, for really putting yourself out there and allowing yourself to take up space and be seen. Because I really feel like so many women are going to feel seen just from hearing your story, like exactly what you said about, oh, you see something on social media, oh, I feel that too. It's like I feel like so many people are going to feel that from this episode. So just thank you so much for being vulnerable. Like I really just appreciate you being here. Yeah, thank you so much for your
We
time.
make such a safe space. Like I knew it from the moment I met you. Like you talk
Mhm.
about energy, and I think that's what I felt when I met you. So thank you for creating that space for me to share my story. I haven't really shared it in depth like that. And I'm so glad that it was in this space. Like you have created such a platform for people to feel safe in that. And yeah, I couldn't have done it without such a safe human on the other side of it.
Oh,
Truly.
thank you. Oh, that means so much to me. Genuinely, thank you. Yeah, and thank you for sharing. It's an honor. Like it's an honor. So
Thank
thank
you for letting
you.
me be here again. I love being here. I like feel so much better afterwards. I think that's vulnerability, right? It's like a vulnerability hangover, but in a good way.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Well, I'll have you again for sure. We have a lot to talk about. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you all for listening. And yeah, with that, we'll talk to you next Wednesday. As we wrap up today's episode, we want to extend our deepest gratitude for joining us on this journey. Your support does not go unnoticed. If you enjoyed this episode and find value in our conversations, please take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also allows us to reach more people who can benefit from our community of healing and support. Every review, every rating makes a difference. Thank you for being a part of the Multiple Truths podcast family. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Multiple Truths podcast. Keep speaking your truth and spreading your light. We love you, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday.